We kick things off with a couple of cute slave girls asking our hero why he ended up buying them. His name seems to be Alan, and these girls want to know his intentions for them. Alan is put in a tough spot as he needs to answer his slaves right now, so he says that he wants to free the world from hunger. However, it is quite clear that he has a ton of intrusive thoughts for these girls, just like any other man would. Now, in order to figure out how Alan got here, we are taken to flashback where he tells us that he saw a pure white space before him. A goddess showed up at the time, and her smile was much more beautiful than any human woman he had ever seen in his life. Of course, this meant that he had passed away, but for some reason, our hero was excited to learn it. As a matter of fact, it seems as if he was waiting for this moment to happen. After all, it is the staple of most web novels for the hero to be reincarnated by a goddess. Alan already starts thinking about being sent to another world where he will become the most powerful hero. He feels he will be given skills that no one else in that world will possess, and he will use his influence to do shady things with cute girls. This is when we also learn that Alan was 30 years old at the time of his passing, and he still did not know the touch of a woman by then. This is his chance to say goodbye to his innocence and become a true player. The goddess is glad to see that he was woken up, but she starts describing his past life as that of a total loser, especially when it comes to women. Our hero is not pleased to hear this, but it's the truth, so he can't even give a response to it. Luckily for him, he had a younger sister in his past life who used to mock him all the time. Not that it is a good thing, but at least Alan is used to verbal abuse, so he does not get too affected by the words of the goddess. He has other things to worry about, so he asks the heavenly woman who she really is. She explains that she is an immortal being, and the people of his world refer to her as a goddess. Now that it is confirmed for Alan that he is no longer alive, he wishes to know how he went. The goddess explains that he bumped into a girl who fell from a building, and the impact of that collision destroyed his spinal cord. That's when Alan remembers that he had actually tried to save a girl falling off a building when he was on his way back home from overtime at his job. The goddess doesn't stop here, and she continues to mock Alan by saying he fell prey to the girl's She even smiles and asks if Alan enjoyed it, but our hero does not understand why a goddess is trolling him. He does admit that he enjoys the wonders of the female body, but in such a situation, he could not even feel the softness of the woman's. At the end of the day, he was not at all satisfied by the encounter, but he wants to know what happened to the girl who fell on him. The goddess tells him not to worry about that, because she was saved thanks to his body serving as a cushion. Alan is glad to hear that his passing was not in vain, and the goddess reveals that she saved his mortal life in order to reward his good deeds. This is why she wants to give him a second chance at life, and simply hearing this makes Alan think about all the shady things he will do once reincarnated. The goddess does reveal that our hero will be sent to a fantasy world of swords and magic. However, the system is a bit different here, as the goddess explains that he will not be reincarnated as a fresh body, but will rather possess the body of another person. Naturally, Alan is a bit confused, and he wants to know the difference between this and normal reincarnation. The goddess explains that in her realm, there are tons of reincarnations going on, but there are not enough vessels to hold all the souls coming her way. In order to ease her own workload, she and other goddesses like her end up choosing bodies of people from the native worlds and have the souls possess them instead of reincarnating them as a fresh person. Alan is not too sure of why she is referring to this as work, but the goddess says that she has it rough over here. She then shows our hero the boy he will be possessing, and it turns out that his name is actually Alan, which will be taken over by our hero. Alan seems to have a nice face, and he looks like a young teenage boy. Our hero then gets excited because with Alan's body and face, he is sure to get all the girls in this world. The goddess adds that she can finally grant him the wish that he so desperately wanted, especially with that innocent body of his. Alan is not impressed by the way she is mocking him, and he says that she is playing with his emotions as easily as she breathes. He then thinks that she should toy with his elephant instead of him if she is so keen. Of course, the goddess can hear his thoughts, so she asks him if he wants to lose his life again. Alan mentions that he did not even say a single word, and she should not be peeking into his thoughts. He then theorizes that in this possession, his soul and Alan's soul will share the same body. In this case, there will be two personalities within the same person, which sounds interesting, but won't be possible as per the goddess. She says that the personality of the original Alan will cease to exist, so it's a bit of an anticlimax. Our hero is told that since the boy is a novice adventurer who was raised in an orphanage, he will lose his life in a starting dungeon. Once his soul leaves his body, the goddess will send our hero's soul into the same body and take over it. Alan is a bit conflicted on this because he will essentially be hijacking another boy's body. This also leads him to speculate on something, which is that Alan will end up as monster food if his body just lies in the dungeon. He does not wish to possess the body of a zombie because he has already been called smelly multiple times in his past life. The goddess explains that he does not need to worry about such things as he will be given a special privilege in this world. This is the skill of regeneration, which means that Alan will be able to heal all his injuries and wounds, no matter how many times he gets hurt. She adds that the skill will get activated the moment Alan's body is taken over by his soul. Effectively, he will be a brand new boy when he possesses the body. It all makes sense to Alan now, and he walks himself through the process of waking up inside another boy's body. It's a bit crazy though, because he will be cheating death the whole time, which is against the rules of life. In essence, he is being given a triple S tier cheat skill to enjoy in this world. Once again, he imagines how he will use this skill to gain favor with women and do unspeakable things to them. But such things can be expected from an untouched boy. The goddess is done with the simple explanations, so she asks Alan if there's anything else he'd like to ask her. Naturally, he says no because he just wants to go out there and conquer all the cute girls of this new world. After all, in his opinion, there is no need to waste any time and shrink away when a glorious future awaits him. With that, the goddess gets the message and decides to begin the process. Alan is super excited for what this new life will hold for him, and he openly claims that he is going to become a harem king. Now, he gets transported to the world, but things are not what they seem. Alan tells us that he had thought life would be easy for him over here, but it has actually turned out to be a bit different. 3 years have passed since he has come to this world, but Alan is still an untouched boy and is about to set a whole new record for how long a man can maintain his innocence. Not only has he not been able to hold a girl's hand, Alan can't even have a proper chat with one. He feels as if this is some kind of cruel joke or a bad dream, but there also appear to have been a few miscalculations. The first point is that it's really hard to defeat monsters, even if they are as weak as a slime. Alan confesses that if he were to fight one, then he would normally be the one to lose. The second point is that you can't learn magic by leveling up, which is a big disadvantage. The goddess had forgotten to say this to him back then, so she showed up in a dream to explain it. This means that Alan can't really make it big in this world the way he thought he would. The only thing he has going for him is the regeneration skill, which does not require a lot of mana, and still has a strong activation. This brings him to his third point, which is that it's impossible to cut his pain receptors. In essence, Alan can heal his injuries, but he can still feel the pain that is caused from them. We can see how tough he has it when he runs away from a small slime and complains about the pain being too much for him to handle. Basically, Alan is like a loser in this world whom no one would want to take as a companion. This brings him to his fourth point, which is that he can't form a party. In essence, he can't use his regeneration skill in front of other people, but only because he wants to keep it a secret. We see Alan using the heal skill again, and as his wound disappears, he admits that he does possess the power of a god. In this world, The heal skill, which helps you cure yourself, is considered to be a miracle art. This is as per the words of the Holy Church, which is seemingly a dangerous organization. Not only has it collected money and authority, the church can also take over the political empire of this kingdom, if it wanted to. We learn that regeneration is a superior version of the healing power, so Alan does not want people from the church to have their eyes on his cheat skill. This was the fifth point he did not calculate, because the church is going to get in his way if he displays his power too often. Of course, giving up just because of such an inconvenience is not like our hero, and he believes that if anyone else was in his place, they would have overlooked this major detail. Having said that, Alan finally arrives where he's been wanting to come for a long time, and it happens to be the slave trader joint. He comments that his brain does not have a lot of IQ points, but it did gain a flash of insight. If he is not able to find companions for his adventure, he might as well go for a slow-paced lifestyle instead. After all, he has saved enough money by doing a side job at a healing clinic for 3 years. With a slave, he will be able to give her any order he likes, and she will have to obey him. On top of that, due to the slave crest, he does not need to worry about the slave revealing his regeneration skills to anyone else. Alan's plan is perfect in his opinion, and he feels that this will be the start of his harem life. Our hero enters the slave house and comes across the main slave trader. He looks quite scary and almost like a villain, but he politely asks Alan what kind of slave he would like. Of course, our hero knows that he can't be caught lacking, so he'll have to maintain his stance. However, he enables a falsetto voice that makes him sound like a little girl when he says he wants to see all that's on sale. The slave trader gives him a quick view of the slave girls on offer, and then he asks him if there was anything that caught his eye. Alan tells us that the only thing which stood out to him was the pricing of these slaves, because there are way too many zeros for him to count. Anyway, it's not like he was not prepared for this, so he carries on with the chat. He feels that this is the time to unveil his intelligence and go on a bargain attack. Alan strikes a pose and asks the slave trader if he has anything else to offer, and this seems to startle the scary seller. Of course, this was just a bluff, but it seemed to have worked, and our hero is ready to buy the slaves that the trader was not able to sell. He admits that he has already been shown everything, so it might be a bit tricky for the slave trader. He then looks at the clueless seller and hopes for him to have something else on offer. After an awkward pause, the slave trader decides to take him to a shady area in his already shady store. Our hero is shocked to see the state of this place, and he wonders if people can even be kept in such conditions. That's when Alan notices a couple of slave girls who are not in the best of condition. These girls look like they've been terribly battered, and even the look they give Alan shows that they have seen some horrible days. Our hero asks the slave trader who these girls are, as he is completely shocked to see the state of their bodies. The slave trader states that the girl with the knife ears is an ancient elf, which is actually a superior breed of elves. The other girl happens to be an elder dwarf, which is also a rare species. Normally, if these girls were in normal condition, then they would have both been special rank as slaves. However, since they are battered and injured, he can afford them. He tells the slave trader that he will purchase both these girls and is given a rather troubling price. As a matter of fact, it's so high that it will blow all his savings away in the blink of an eye. Even so, our hero wants to return dignity to these girls as soon as possible. Now, Alan purchases the slave girls and takes them away from the shop. He manages to reach a spot where he is sure no one will be able to see him, but the girls worry that he might try something shady. He reassures them that he is not a creep, and there is no reason for the girls to be afraid of him. Of course, the girls are not going to believe such a simple line, so Alan tells them that he understands how much they must have endured to reach this state. Having said that, our hero goes on to use his regeneration skills on them, and they are back to prime form in a matter of seconds. Now, Alan may have noble intentions in his mind for such an action, But then he sees how cute the girls are, and his intrusive thoughts take over his mind once again. The ancient elf is shocked and in disbelief over the fact that her body and her eyes are all back to normal. Even the elder dwarf can't believe her own eyes when she sees that her hands are back. Naturally, this is a great moment for the girls, but Alan has been presented with an odd situation. Of course, he did want to have cute slave girls with him for his journey, but he did not expect the girls to be even prettier than the goddess who sent him here. They don't look anything like the state in which he had bought them, so it's a bit of a pleasant surprise for Alan. Our hero wonders how he should speak with these girls and accidentally uses the word mommy. But then the girls ask him for his name. Alan tries his best to say his name, but he accidentally bites his tongue in the process. It's a hilarious scene as the girls wonder why their new master is fumbling, but Alan realizes that he needs to calm down right now. After all, he finally has a harem in another world. Now that he has achieved his dream, Alan feels that he will finally be able to live out his intrusive thoughts in grand fashion with his slave girls. At least that's how a normal man would look at it. Unfortunately for Alan, he had messed up big time by blowing all of his life savings on these two girls. Since he has no money left to pay even for an inn, he has been forced to live in the open, and that too inside a monastery deep in the mountains. If that isn't bad enough, he also has to provide for his new slave girls, which means he has an extra responsibility now. To put it bluntly, he's very broke and in desperate need of support. It's at this very moment that the goddess shows up in his thoughts and makes fun of our hero for not planning ahead. Of course, Alan does not appreciate this, and he tells her that she can't just barge into his monologue just because she is a goddess. She makes fun of him yet again by saying it doesn't cost anything for him to have her inside his thoughts. But he has had enough, so he tells her to get lost. This is a hilarious situation for sure, and it looks like Alan has not planned for other things as well. Of course, he only wanted to hear his slave girls singing praises for him due to his heroic acts. It's intrusive thoughts such as these that have led to his current lack of funds. However, despite all his efforts, he is only continuing his record of holding on to his innocence. This is shameful for Alan because he is basically not able to eat a meal, even though it has been presented to him openly. Now, we learn that the ancient elf is named Sylphie, and the elder dwarf is named Noel. They are both extremely rare races in this world, which is why almost everything about them is a mystery. The reason for this is that he is not able to read or write the language of the New World. The goddess had left him a note saying he could learn the language himself, but Alan knows that there is a lot for him to understand in his appraisal scroll. Our hero remembers that this is not the time for him to act like a loser and worry and despair because he has a job to do and mouths to feed. He decides to grow some food as soon as possible, and he thinks this will be an easy task since he has the knowledge of growing crops from his original world. However, as he begins with his methods, Sylphie comes up to him and asks what he's doing here. Alan is so blinded by her beauty that he loses his own train of thought and gazes at her for a bit. He soon snaps back to reality and says that he is trying to grow some yams. Clearly, the elf girl has no idea what he means by this. He asks her if she does not like yams, but then she says that she's more interested to know how he's going to grow them. Alan worries that his slave girl will not want to eat the yams that have been tended to by an untouched boy such as himself. Additionally, he feels that his slaves are not happy with him as a master and want to be sustainable by themselves. He can't bear the humiliation of his own thoughts, so he figures a way to walk off, thus confusing Sylphie completely. He rushes away to get some food, and he hopes that the girls won't have to sleep under the sky and stay hungry for long. Then, he goes to town to buy some good and brings it back for the slave girls. Alan knows this has taken a toll on his wallet, but he's hoping the extra meat will make the girls nicer to cuddle with. He offers food to Sylphie and Noel, but they look a bit wary, so he tells them it's fine to have it. They thank him and he tries to be nice, but he feels they still don't trust him yet. This is a problem for our hero because at this rate, he will never be able to act out his intrusive thoughts with his slaves. He needs these girls to be open with him as soon as possible. But that does not look likely as of now. Alan needs to find some work so that he can pay for his own meal now. But all he manages to nibble on is some bait. Now, our hero heads to town, and he tells the girls to wait for him, which is quite surprising for the both of them. He asks if they want anything in particular to eat, but the girls both say no. This is not good for Alan because he genuinely does not know what to get them from the market. Anyway, he decides to head off, after which we finally get to see what the slave girls are thinking. Sylphie can't believe that her master has just casually walked off and left his slaves all by themselves. The elf girl then tells us that even though she and Noel have slave crests, it will not be too hard for them to break away from them, and they both have regained their original powers. She wonders if this is a ploy from Alan to test their loyalty. But what confuses her even more is the fact that he wanted to grow yams all by himself. She would actually be extremely useful for this, as she is an ancient elf who has the power to grow plants with her magic. After all, the appraisal scroll has all of this written down, so her master's actions are quite confusing for the elf girl. As a matter of fact, her powers will make the growing process almost instant. This means that Alan does not need to toil away like a laborer each and every day. All he needs to do is give Sylphie the order, and she will obey. The elf girl is totally clueless when it comes to her master because she wants to be of use to him. He did restore her body, so she is extremely grateful to him. But despite owning her and Noel, Sylphie has no idea why he is not doing shady things with them. So basically, Alan has everything set for him to live out his fantasy, but he doesn't make use of it at all. This actually leads her to think that he has some other plan once he wins her and Noel over. Of course, it's not that deep, but she does not know that Alan is as clueless as a baby in this world. In order to confirm her suspicions, Sylphie follows her master around town and notices that he is working at a healing clinic to earn some money. She is amazed to see him healing a young girl, but she wonders why he is not using restoration, which was what he used on them. If the church were to learn about this skill, then they will give him the highest post and honor in their office. This way, our hero will never have to worry about money ever again. There are lots of questions in Sylphie's mind, but she has to come back to her senses to see what Alan is doing. He gets done with his treatment and has a friendly little chat with the girl, which makes him appear like an angel. Sylphie becomes even more suspicious because Alan is seeming too good to be true. After all, a person who buys slaves is not exactly known to be a good person in this world. On top of that, he does not want anything from the slaves he owns either. So Sylphie really can't crack his persona yet. It really frustrates her not to be able to decipher her master, even though he is a man of culture who enjoys the simple things in life, such as comparing a cloud to a girl's curvy body. Since this time, around 3 months have passed and Alan is still stuck doing the same old thing. Now, the yams have finally been harvested, so he can treat his slaves to a new meal. However, Sylphie is at her wit's end, so she asks him why he is not using her to grow his food. Our hero wonders if his slave girls want to do farm work, but that is not needed from them at all since he can use his restore skill again and again to regain his stamina. Also, he wants to brag about how he supported 2 rare species all by himself. He decides to thank Sylphie for offering help, but it does not look like he is going to ask for it. This is when the elf girl decides to show off her own skills, and she tells him that her tree magic can harvest crops immediately. She goes on to summon a tree filled with yams, and it shocks Alan like nothing else he has seen in this world so far. He takes a moment to realize what he has just witnessed, and he wants to know what kind of cheat skill this is. He thinks that Sylphie has been hiding her powers from him all this time, but she is of the opinion that he has known about her skills right from the start. This is when it finally hits Alan that the slave girls and their powers would all have been mentioned in his appraisal scroll. Unfortunately, he can't read that piece of paper at all. which is why he has found himself in such a situation. Alan considers telling the girls the truth, which is that he is pretty much like a child in this world who can't read or write. However, he can't just tell the girls that their master is a baby because he feels they already don't think too highly of him. He finds the whole thing a bit shameful because a man has to look good before his girl. Having said this, he feels that he should just tell them an awkward lie and be done with it. He has to think of something fast. Otherwise, the slave girls might think that he has some odd liking for yams. This situation continues to grow funnier with each passing second, so Alan needs to be quick with his wit. He just has to ensure that he is not looked at as a creep. But this may be a bit tougher than he had expected. Our hero needs to raise his worth in front of his slave girls, so he ends up with a crazy story. He strikes a pose and tells them that magic is like a coin with two sides. Depending on the user, it can either be used as a cure or a curse. This is exactly why he has decided never to force others to use magic for him. If they are to use their powers, then they must do so of their own free will. He also says that the thought of being able to do anything he wants is a very dangerous one and can lead to serious issues. Of course, this is all just a big fat lie, because this is exactly how he was thinking when he had bought the slaves in the first place. He wanted to do all kinds of shady things to them, but it was the lack of cash that turned him into a laborer. Either way, he smiles and tells the girls that they should not force themselves to do anything with their magic. It's a bit too embarrassing for him to continue like this, so he decides to walk away from the scene over the excuse of harvesting. This display gets Sylphie thinking about her master in a different way now. She had initially thought that if she would show him her magic, then he would reveal his true colors. After all, it's hard to put up an act when you see something like a magic tree. However, she feels she was wrong to assume anything about Alan, because even though his expression had changed, it felt as if her magic opened up a wound that was deep inside his heart. Basically, she thought that Alan was suffering from something with the way he was speaking to her. This is when she convinces herself that her master has experienced the same thing as she did earlier. She feels that he had also lost himself to his own powers of restoration, and it might have led him down the wrong path. Then, something may have happened that changed his views on life, which is why he is not ready to show off his powers to anyone. It actually reminds Sylphie of the time she used to flaunt her own powers as well. It's something she feels ashamed of now, so she decides to do something nice for her master. She goes to Noel and asks her for some time, because she wants to discuss the future of their relationship with Alan. We see this the very next day when our hero is stumped to find a whole collection of fruits and vegetables in front of his very eyes. Of course, to have so many plants in the span of one night has to be Sylphie's doing, as it is basically a cheat code for growing harvests. This is clearly a lot more useful than toiling away for hours, so Alan feels as if his thunder has been stolen. We also learn that he was secretly hoping to become a master cultivator of agriculture. The elf girl greets him and says that she has also decided to harvest crops for him, but he asks her why she used her magic. Sylphie makes a cute face and asks her master if she was too hasty in doing this, even if it was of her own free will. Alan realizes that this is because of what he told the girls yesterday, so he wonders if Sylphie is trying to find fault with him. He was hoping to use his earth knowledge to become unbeatable in the field of growing crops, but that clearly is not the case now. On top of that, he fears that the girls might look at him even more unfavorably now because he can't even manage to use their powers, but still wants to keep feeding them yams. Alan decides to regain his composure, and then he tells the girls that they did not need to do this. Sylphie says it's fine, and then she decides to make breakfast with Noel, probably so that they can be nice to their master. However, Alan feels like he can't show off to them anymore. This is when he asks the girls to wait, because he does have one last thing to flaunt. It's basically him trying to do the whole do-it-yourself cheat, wherein he makes concrete. It's an item that still does not exist in this world, so it would place him as a respectable person yet again. He wants to improve their living conditions and hopes to gain some brownie points. But the girls ask him what he is doing here. Noel shows up and tells Alan that she can smell him making things. She wants to make these items as well, so she decides to join him in this process. Alan is a bit surprised to see Noel talking to him this way, as she is usually very reserved and not too keen to talk about anything. She asks her master what he wishes to make, and he explains that he does not want to keep camping with his slaves. This is why he wishes to construct a building with concrete, and this makes Noel ask him what that substance is supposed to be. He tries to explain it first by using the term cement, but that is also something which does not exist in this world. Noel wants to be taught everything, so Alan goes ahead and explains how she will need to get limestone, clay, and quartz. Noel is listening to her master with a lot of intent, and he is pleased to see how responsive she is to his teachings. Some time passes by, and our hero manages to teach Noel each and everything that he knows about building a structure. He tells the dwarf girl that he has only decided to share this with her, but practicing it is a whole other vibe. Noel says that she has more or less understood the whole thing, and now she wants Alan to sit back and watch her at work. She goes on and uses a spell known as extraction, which basically extracts minerals to form items. She is able to summon all the raw materials needed for creating cement, and Alan can't believe Noel has such a useful skill. Of course, this means that his own contributions will be of no consequence, and then we see the dwarf girl using another spell, known as pulverized. This makes our hero realize that Noel also has cheat code skills, which makes things even worse for him if he wants to impress his slaves. The dwarf girl uses her fire and cooling techniques as well, after which we see a whole pile of cement being created in front of our hero's eyes. In order to complete the process, Noel will need some help from Sylphie, and this is because of Alan telling her to use bamboo shoots for the construction process. He said it with a lot of pride back then, but he feels as if he is no longer needed for anything anymore. One good thing though, is that both the girls have managed to speak with each other more frequently. However, this leads him to believe that his own slave girls will have no further use for him if they team up. They might find him to be useless and will continue to build their own empire without him. Alan needs to watch out for this, but as we all know, he is just being a bit too paranoid about the whole thing. Now, the house is built and ready to be checked, so Alan needs to say something here. Noel goes on to use the hardened skill so that the security of the house is properly done. She is basically a master builder with her skills, and then we see Sylphie filling up the bamboo sticks with mana to strengthen them as well. This makes her the mistress of plants, and both the girls have proven their powers to our hero. Alan wonders why it turned out this way for him, because he wanted to be the one to show off to the girls. They invite him inside the house, but he feels as if they are taunting him for being useless. He laments the fact that he was not reincarnated with a cheat skill like these girls, as he wanted to be strong and flirt with cute babes. Considering the powers of these slave girls, Alan has no idea what will happen to him later. Now, we see the goddess who is watching all the fun from a goddess tablet high up in heaven. She comments that ever since Alan bought Sylphie and Noel, he will be worshipped almost as if he is some kind of demon king. However, at a later point in his life, he will be considered as a threat by the hero of this world. It will cause him to lead a life full of ups and downs. She feels that Alan will turn out to be a very entertaining prospect for her, so she should make fun of him as many times as she can. That's when she corrects herself and says that she actually meant checking up on him as many times as she can. Now, we shift to Noel, who tells us that her dwarf instincts have started to act up ever since she heard what her master told her about cement and concrete. As a matter of fact, it's her first time experiencing such things, and she is actually surprised that Alan's advice has turned out to be true. She did as he told, and she got exactly what she thought she would get. This means that her master is not any random guy who happened to buy her and Sylphie. His restoration power is great, and the fact that he does not want to show off that power is even greater. However, what stands out the most to the dwarf girl is that Alan is not really conceited with the amount of knowledge that he possesses. He's not afraid to share such information, which makes him a true catch in her eyes. On top of that, he was able to teach an elder dwarf such useful things, and it has made Noel very happy. Sylphie has also said that they can put their trust in Alan, so Noel decides to go with the same opinion. She too wants to take the weight off her master's shoulders and contribute to his plans. Our hero takes a nap, but when he wakes up, he notices that there are 2 more buildings in front of him. He can't figure out how this was done so quickly, but then Noel shows up and he realizes that it must have been her doing. She explains that she built 3 buildings so that each of them can have one to themselves. Hearing the dwarf girl say such a thing with so much calmness is not normal to our hero. She then comes close to Alan, but he panics because he does not want his intrusive thoughts to take over again. She says once again that she has built these houses for her, Sylphie, and Alan, but he only says to himself that Noel is a bit too close to his body. The dwarf girl then says that since she has worked hard, she would like her master to praise her efforts. Alan is a bit taken aback by this request, but then Sylphie shows up from behind and asks him to praise Noel as well. He is surprised to see his slave giving him an order, and that's when he figures that the girls must be trying to gang up on him. In other words, he feels that the slave girls are trying to use him for their own work instead of the other way around. He imagines a hilarious scene where both Sylphie and Noel make fun of him for having nothing to boast about himself apart from his restoration skill. He has no money, no talent, and is a rather incompetent person that way. They add further insult to injury by calling him a skinny nerd with no experience in women. Suddenly, the goddess also shows up to join the girls in their roast of Alan. As a matter of fact, they were so worried about his intrusive thoughts that they decided to build extra houses for each other in order to stay away from him. Alan is obviously just imagining all of this, and he makes it worse for himself by thinking the girls look at him as some kind of shameless pig who wants to do shady things to them. His thoughts start to spiral out of control, but then he somehow snaps back to reality when Sylphie asks him if all is well. He comes to his senses and simply plays off whatever was going on in his head till now. He's come this far already, so there's no way he's going to back down now. He is in a position where he can praise Noel for all her hard work, which means that he can pat her on the head as much as he can. This somehow makes him happy because he can at least touch his slave girl now. That's when he proceeds to pat Noel on the head and thank her for her service. This makes her extremely happy, and she smiles to let her feelings be known to our hero. Her hair is very smooth and silky, which is more than enough to get Alan worked up. He finds her to be so cute that his own thoughts are being purified at this moment. Sylphie can see how happy the dwarf girl is, so she feels a bit jealous of her too. Noel starts to blush, so Alan gives her a bit of a push to make her feel even better. However, Sylphie did not expect him to get so intimate with his slave after having the houses built. She then reminds herself that she is an ancient elf, which is an elite species. She should stay true to her kind and not get worked up over a simple patting on the head. Having said that, she feels that she should increase the number of plants that she has harvested so far. Maybe this will get her a pat on the head as well. She tries to convince us that she does not have any other intentions, but it's a bit too late for that. Just like that, a couple more months pass by, and then we see Alan tending to crops by himself yet again. It's almost as if he has forgotten about the powers of his slave girls, and this leads Sylphie to wonder why he doesn't make use of her and Noel. She goes on to explain to us how magic is divided into 5 attributes, namely fire, water, wind, metal, and earth. She has an evolved wind attribute which goes with an aptitude for plants. Noel's aptitudes are with fire and metal, while having an attribute for earth. This means that the both of them make for the perfect combo. After all, this is a combination of food and dwelling, which is amazing for a person like Alan. However, He has never forced them to use their magic against their will, and only lets them use it whenever they feel like it. Sylphie states that he is not blinded by desires, but that couldn't be further from the truth, as Alan simply does not have the guts to do shady things with his slaves. She then comments that he does not like conflict at all and chooses to stay away from any kind of stress. This leads the elf girl to wonder if her master actually wants to live life like a hermit. The only obsession she can observe is that Alan likes yams, but apart from that, he seems to be a really nice guy. Despite this, she is sure that there are things that her master wishes to do, and she wants to know what they are. At the end of the day, Sylphie will not rest till she knows exactly what's going on in our hero's mind. She decides to find out Alan's true feelings by confronting him about it herself. She knows that it can't be because of him being lonely, because he would not have chosen rare species like her and Noel in the first place if that was the case. Alan asks her what's the matter, and then she says that she wants to hear it from his own mouth. She asks why he ended up buying her and Noel, and she hopes to understand his true aim. Alan tells us that it was only to do unspeakable things to his slave girls, and it really is that simple. However, there's no way he can say this to them. But with Noel also asking the same question, he has to give some kind of answer. Sylphie explains that she and Noel are amongst the rarest of species in this world, so their power is something that simply cannot be imagined. However, he only uses them to make up for the shortfalls around him. She wants to know if there is anything he actually needs them for at all. Of course, this makes no sense to our hero, because he has an endless supply of food and a really nice set of houses to relax in. It's as good as things can get for a man like him. But these girls clearly don't seem to get the message. If they're asking why he is always so kind to them, then it's because they are feeding him and giving him shelter with their powers. If they're asking why he's not tapping into their potential, then it's because he does not want to feel useless despite being their master. It's not like he needs to tap into any further potential for anything at all. He is not going to defeat any demon lord, so he does not need the girls for an adventure. As a matter of fact, if these girls want him to lick their feet, then he will have no other option but to obey. Then again, this is the kind of task that he would enjoy doing, so he wouldn't mind such a question. Now that he is in the hot seat, he has to figure out a lie that will keep these girls interested and satisfied. Now, Sylphie decides to show some more of her magic tree powers to make her master realize just how useful she can be to him. Noel does the same by showing off her high-speed refining skills. However, Alan does not realize that the girls are doing this to show that they can be of use to him. Instead, he takes it that they are both trying to destroy his self-respect. If this is their intention after all, then he might as well spit out the truth and be done with it. He obviously has tons of desires and intrusive thoughts, so he is going to risk it all and say them as they are. In his mind, he says that he wants to do shady things, but out loud, he says that he wants to free the world from hunger, just as we had seen earlier. This leads both the girls to a state of shock, as they most definitely did not expect to hear such a reason. Alan smiles on the outside, but he feels like stabbing himself from the inside. He calls himself a coward, and even states that if he was not the eldest son in his family, then he would have passed away from simply hating himself right then and there. Now, Sylphie thinks about what she just heard and explains to us that the idea of freeing the world from hunger is something that only a god would consider to be ideal. More so, this is not something that you would willingly admit just like that. However, after hearing it, she makes sense of everything that Alan has been doing till now. The yams that he loves so much and treats like treasures are basically effective plants that can even be grown on wastelands. This could indeed help people who suffer from starvation and do not have access to fertile land. This could also explain the weird looks he has on his face from time to time. Sylphie reasons that it could be because of the distant ideal he has envisioned for himself. Now, the elf girl takes a look at Noel and tells her that their master holds a great ideal in his heart. It's so strong and far removed that even they could never have imagined such a thing despite being such rare species. It still might be risky to put her trust in him. But then again, Sylphie has never met a man like Alan her entire life. She stands next to him and says that she wants to follow him and be at his side to see the world he wishes to bring to life. If this is his main goal after all, then the elf girl says that they will need to cultivate more land. Of course, she is giving him way too much credit for a boy who simply wants to get laid, but such is life. Our hero says okay to this, but he is still wondering how such an excuse actually ended up working in his favor. It's actually the first time that he has managed to make a step forward in the eyes of his slave girls. However, Alan will need to stick to this story, now if he is to keep both Sylphie and Noel by his side. Now, our hero tells us that there are only two types of people in this world, winners and losers. The losers like to follow, and the winners like to plan and lead from the front. Similarly, these are the people who either get exploited or do the exploiting themselves. This takes him back to one of his memories in school, where he would get bullied by his classmates. There was a girl named Mizuki who would keep taking his food away from him, and whenever he'd raise an issue, she'd simply say that she was growing girl, so she needed the extra food. As it turns out, Mizuki was actually his little sister, and the fact that even she could bully Alan tells us a lot about how gullible he is. As he remembers her mocking him in one of his memories, our hero wonders if she is doing well back in his original world. Alan fades away thinking about how he has left that life behind and is now reincarnated in a world where he can't even get with his own slaves. Sylphie and Noel bring him back to reality yet again by calling out his name multiple times, and our hero panics because he drifted away into the past to escape his present. The elf girl once again tells him that they should cultivate the land if they are to save the world from hunger. Alan says yes to this, but he curses himself for having made up such a lie when all he wanted to do was act on his intrusive thoughts. The goddess decides to show up as well to mock him one more time. Now, Sylphie thinks of a way to effectively grow multiple crops, but Alan wonders why she hasn't realized his true intentions yet. After all, if she is so smart, then she should at least have gotten a hint of how shady her master really is. This leads him to have confidence issues yet again because he feels that the slave girls are simply taking his lies at face value since they don't really expect much from him at this point. He also fears that at this rate, he will be the one dancing in the palms of his own slaves rather than the other way around. The panic inside his mind goes crazy yet again, and Alan hilariously starts imagining all kinds of unfavorable situations. He still feels that there's some more knowledge from his past life that can be used here, and he plans to utilize that to get his revenge on these slave girls. Of course, he is just imagining things and his slaves actually like him. Now, Alan tells Noel and Sylphie that they should focus on making fertilizer. Of course, they don't know what he means by this, so he says that it is used as a supplement to grow crops on barren land. After all, Sylphie's tree magic may not be a sustainable option in the long run, so they will need an alternate solution. Sylphie also feels that it would be better to use fertilizer because it would result in her using lesser mana for the crops. This way, she can reserve her power for the main crops and enhance the flavor of the plants they're growing. Then, Alan explains to the girls the concept of crop rotation, which means that they will be able to grow everything as per the seasons. Our hero thinks about getting cattle to graze the soil now, which means that he will also get a lot of natural manure to fertilize it. This could be the start of an agricultural revolution and truly change the game of growing plants in this world. Alan wants to continue feeling like a boss, so he tells his slave girls that he will need to make hatchets and other such items to widen the land for crop growth. Sylphie seems to be amazed to hear this, and the look on her face suggests that our hero may have finally impressed her. However, Alan's thoughts start to get the better of him, and he worries that he is being a bit too boastful in front of her and Noel. After all, there is no woman who would love to spend so much time with such a vain man. Suddenly, Noel moves closer to our hero and tugs at his sleeve, because she is impressed by what he has just done. Since he knows all the flows of such events, Noel wants her master to teach her all about it. She wants to learn how to make hatchets and the other items. But her eagerness makes Alan worry that she will steal the limelight from him. Just like on Earth, where his loss would become someone else's gain, Alan is facing the same kind of situation over here with his slave girls. For a moment, he considers being tough, and he tells the girls that he should be the one doing these tasks, since he is the man of the house. However, Sophie tells him that there is no point in throwing a tantrum over here. Naturally, he is confused by what his slave girl is telling him, because she's treating him as if he is some kind of petulant child. Also, Sophie's behavior, such as tapping him on the nose and calling him a good boy, makes Alan feel as if he is a dog in some 20th century romantic comedy. This is not what he was hoping for when he became the master of this harem. Noel now holds on to Alan's arm and demands an explanation for the fertilizers. Our hero can feel her soft body on his arm, so it awakens his intrusive thoughts. Eventually, he can no longer fight the temptation, and he decides to tell the girls everything he knows about the fertilizer. Alan explains that they will need the three most important nutrients for plants: nitrogen, potassium, and phosphoric acid. Once again, our hero goes on a long rant talking about how he will utilize these ingredients along with Sylphie's tree magic to get the job done. Noel is really enjoying this influx of information, and she feels that her master is quoting something mysterious just like Galileo. Alan does not get the reference here, but his slave girl does not want to wait any longer, so she gets to work immediately. Later, it's time for a meal, and Alan is served a bowl of yam soup. He seems to like this dish, and then Sylphie is about to call out to Noel as well. However, before she can do that, the cute slave girl pops up herself and says that there is something she would like to show the others before they have lunch. It turns out that she has already made the hatchets and other items along with the fertilizer. Noel was still not sure of the ratios to be used, so she tried to mix and match various combinations. Alan can only stand there in amazement, as he has never seen anyone make fertilizer so quickly. Noel goes on to take some notes and write down all the ratios she used so that they can be used for further reference. Alan is so impressed by Noel that he believes she could very well be a reincarnation of Galileo himself. Noel then says that our hero's work will become a lot easier thanks to this, but her words don't have the kind of effect she was hoping for. Alan has lost yet another opportunity to show off his modern knowledge, and now Noel is the one in charge of manufacturing. With Sylphie's tree magic, she automatically is in charge of cultivation, so Alan wonders where that leaves him. As of now, his only option is reclamation and logging, which is actually just an odd job. Alan does admit that it's a necessary activity, but it is usually given to a background character. He reminds himself of Big G from a popular kids show, who used to do similar things, but he does not want to take the place of such a character. After all, he has been reincarnated in another world as a cheat holder, so he deserves a better job than that. Our hero now looks at both his slave girls who want to get praises from him, but he laments that they have stolen his thunder yet again. These two girls have simply tossed the basic chores onto their master, and it leads Alan to start doubting himself yet again for no good reason. Having said that, Alan decides to praise Noel for a job well done, and he pats her on the head. He does feel as if he is getting exploited over here, and he cries in his mind that he is the master to these girls, so he should be getting more respect. Even so, he admits that touching Noel's soft head does feel good because of her fluffy hair. Seeing Noel getting so much affection from her master makes Sylphie a bit jealous, but then she comes back to her senses and reminds herself that it is not a good thing to get so emotional. After all, Alan is simply thanking Noel for all her hard work, so it really should not be affecting the elf girl so much. Either way, she decides to break up the moment and calls out to Alan, asking him if he and Noel would like to eat lunch now and postpone the cultivation to the afternoon. Our hero does not have any issue with this, and then the three of them sit down for lunch. As Alan enjoys his soft and flaky yams, Sylvie comments on how curious he is in general as a person. She admits that her master's desire to rid the world of hunger is an admirable desire, no matter how impossible it may seem at their current level. What really impressed her earlier was when Alan started talking about fertilizer and crop rotation. Our hero is actually becoming a very strong role model to his slave girls. But the problem is that he himself is too insecure of his own abilities. Now Sylvie runs through how through Alan's methods, more people can be fed with lesser labor. Such efficiency and productivity is not something that people from this world easily possess. So it definitely seems like Alan has had a lot of knowledge and education growing up. Sylvie continues to look at her master as an ideal man who for a long time was alone and trying his best to make his wishes a reality. Of course, the truth of the matter is that he is simply a teenage boy who wants to release all of his intrusive thoughts, but is unable to do so because of his shyness. Anyway, Sylvie believes that the reason Alan bought her was because he knew that an ancient elf would be the only person who could freely control plant growth with her tree magic. Even so, he does not force her to work and does not even bother to use the slave crest. For a master to respect his slave's independence is an amazing trait, and it leads Sylvie to think out loud. She calls Alan a curious person once again, so he asks her if she was saying something. The elf girl quickly changes the topic by asking if anyone wants a second helping. Now, it's time to see our hero in action as he prepares for the cultivation. The hatchet that Noel has made for him is really smooth and nice to use, so it makes his life a lot easier. Alan continues to plow the field, but also thinks about plowing some other areas as well. Either way, even if things have not gone how he would have wanted them to, he is glad that at least he is able to sustain himself and his slave girls. Plus, he is confident that he will somehow end up fulfilling his dream to have a harem as well. Our hero continues to use his regeneration skill to make sure he does not get tired, and he is thankful to have gotten such a cheat. Alan knows that he can use this skill for his vitality as well, which means that he can make any kind of soil fertile. The one to come up with this skill is of course our hero. But he is clearly not happy about still being a single and untouched boy despite having knowledge and regeneration. Alan continues to plow the field, and he can only hope for his slave girls to praise him for a job well done. It is fine for him to pat them on the head and show some appreciation, but he would also like to have the same thing done to him. This hilarious cycle of restoration continues well into the evening, but the cultivation being done due to the restoration is indeed quite amazing. Noel is super impressed by her master, especially because she feels that his goal of ending world hunger will surely be fulfilled if he continues to work at this rate. She also believes that her role as an elder dwarf is a part of his plan to make his dreams a reality. However, she still finds it odd that her master has trusted her and Sylvie with such crucial information. After all, it's very easy for them to use such information behind his back. At first, Noel wonders if Alan is confident that his slave girls won't betray him. But then she remembers that her master has not given her or Sylvie a single order till now. She concluded that Alan wants her and Sylvie to work with him, so that his ideals can truly become a reality in the near-distant future. It is because of this trust that he has shared such handy information with the ancient elf and elder dwarf. Noel knows that she can't respond to such trust in kind, so she swears upon her elder dwarf name that she will support him right till the end. Noel believes that Sylvie is also thinking the same thing, which is true as we see the ancient elf commenting on how her master is so amazing. Noel also wants to give it her all, and then Sylvie talks to her about taking action on their own, because that is exactly what our hero wants them to do. Of course, the actual action he wants from his slave girls is supposed to be a lot shadier, but that clearly does not look like it's going to happen. As they watch their master working hard, both Sylvie and Noel promise that they will do everything to make his dream a reality. Of course, Alan himself has no idea what these girls are talking about and continues to slave away at the soil. Later on, we meet the naughty goddess who decides to mock Alan once again for being lazy and useless when it comes to actually making use of his slaves. She comments that Alan has too much free time on his hands, and then makes fun of him for not getting any love from his slave girls, even after doing so much work. Our hero is obviously annoyed by the goddess and her behavior, so he asks her to not poke fun at him when he is trying to relax alone with his thoughts. Now that she is here, Alan wants to ask her a question he's had on his mind right from the start. He wants to know if all the other goddesses are also like her, because she does come across as an extremely bitter entity. The goddess simply laughs and says that Alan chose this for himself right when he was reincarnated, so it's just her job to make sure she's mocking him. Our hero can't really say much to this, because it's true that he has a lot of free time on his hands. Thanks to Sylphie and Noel, all of the cultivation and housework can be done in an instant through their magic. As far as the intrusive thoughts and shady intentions are concerned, the goddess is sure that Alan is not going to realize it ever in his life. This leads to some intrusive thoughts coming to life, and it makes Alan lively again. He questions himself as to why he is living his life as a retired old man who does not have any hobbies of his own. Since he does not have any activities to do right now, Alan decides to make something happen. He rushes to Noel and asks her if she is free as he needs her to do a favor for him. This lights up her eyes, and she asks what it is that her master wants her to do. Alan gives her the blueprint to something and says that he wants her to make this for him. The elder dwarf girl takes a look at the blueprint and gets closer to her master, making him feel good. He can see that Noel's arm is soft, but wonders why she is getting so close to him. That's when it strikes Alan that she could be so immersed in the blueprint that she has forgotten he is standing next to her. Noel can't see any sizes mentioned for this item, so Alan tells her he forgot to mention them. He states that Noel just needs to make this item big enough to fit on top of a table, and then he tells us that the real reason he didn't mention any sizes was because he does not know how to read or write in this world's language. The blueprint is nothing more than a simple illustration, but Noel says she'll be able to make the item without any stress at all. However, she would like to know why her master wants such an item, and it makes him a bit nervous, leading us to wonder what exactly it is that he wants his slave girl to make. He simply says that it's something the present version of him requires, so it motivates Noel even further. Alan sells the idea of this item even further by saying it will bring joy to Noel and Sylphie. But it just happens to be a board which can be used for games like chess and Jenga. The idea is for Alan and the two girls to play these games with each other and enjoy this time together, so that they can eventually come across more topics to talk about. His true intention is to eventually play punishment games so that he can work around the rules to get his R-rated rewards. Noel is pleased by the concept of the game, so she decides to start working on it immediately. However, Alan may be missing the point here, and even the goddess mocks him for coming up with such a questionable plan.
Now that Noelle has got something to do which she is clearly interested in, she joins her master Alan in making something at the workshop. Of course, this makes Sylphie a bit conscious because she does not have any idea what they could be working on. She spies on our hero as he tries to make games such as chess, yogi, and Jenga with Noelle. Sylphie can hear these words, but she does not know what they mean because she is not familiar with them at all. She also overhears Alan saying it would be better to state that they are playing the games rather than saying they are using them for recreation. Such words can only awaken intrusive thoughts within Sylphie, so she watches on as Alan teaches the rules of the game to Noelle. Sylphie is a bit confused now, because she thought our hero had a main goal set in his mind to rid the world of hunger. Keeping this in mind, there should be no time to be playing games, but even so, she decides to ask Alan for the details because the games do look interesting enough to her. The slave girl shows up and asks Alan if he would allow her to join him and Noelle in their games. He says yes with one of the shadiest smiles you can ever see from a protagonist, but Sylphie just believes that there is something more to the games than meet the eye. His lethargic appearance may be true in real life, but for some reason, Sylphie tries to find hidden meanings in Alan's actions. She still believes that Alan is simply acting this way to put off his slave girls, which means she is going to be in for a huge surprise when she learns the truth. Sylphie tells us that the real Alan has gotten himself a great power thanks to endless tribulations and suffering. He is indeed a sage with a good heart whose main goal is to help other people. Of course, none of her assumptions is true, because our hero is just a shady boy who does not know how to express it to his own slave girls. Either way, Sylphie wants to add to the strength of her idol, which is why it is important for her to learn the designs of his games. Now that both the girls want to play, Alan decides to begin with Reversi. In order to play this game, the pieces will need to be divided into black and white, but there is no time to learn so many details, so the shady goddess shows up and tells us all to read about it on Wikipedia or something. After his explanation is done, Alan reminds the girls that if their pieces fall, then they will be the losers. More than anything else, Sylphie is fascinated by the rules of this game, so she wants to know more about it. She starts to think deeply again as the rules of the game can be understood by anyone, and yet they involve a multitude of strategies with a high amount of freedom. Sylphie can see a future where both children and adults will get pulled into games like these and create quite the storm. She's not wrong, as this has already been done on Earth before. It's a literal gold mine, and Sylphie is thankful to her master for letting his slave girls see such things. Now, Alan finally decides to awaken the dark side and asks the girls if they would like to play for a bet instead of just fun. He says that the winner of the game can give any order they would like to the loser, who will have to obey these commands without any resistance. The objective is quite clear here, but Sylphie is not a man of culture, so she looks at it differently. To her, Alan is giving his slave girls a chance to give orders, which is rather exciting to her. Of course, she has to calm herself down because she does not want her master to see such emotions on her face. She forces herself to believe that Alan is testing the girls to see if they will notice something or not. After all, to Sylphie, her master is not the type to just play games for the heck of it. To her, this is not some kind of amusement but has some kind of connection towards ending world hunger. In modern terms, Delulu is the Solulu. Sylphie wonders if she should decline the bet out of respect to her master, or accept it to showcase her ability to act as per her choice. Now, Noelle shows up from behind and tells Sylphie that the both of them will need to do what they can to prove their mettle. This inspires Sylphie, so she decides to go ahead with the bet, taking Noelle on her side. After all, it will be a lot more fun for them this way, and it kicks off some competitive vibes. The slave girls strive to do their best as they wish to meet their master's expectations. Alan still has his evil smile on, because he is confident that he will win the game and finally get what he has always wanted. He kicks off the match by making his first move, and Sylphie worries about what may happen here. After all, Alan is the one who has invented this game, so there would not be any way for these rookie girls to win. The only thing is that Alan just makes one of the dumbest moves anyone could have ever made in this game, proving that he really is nothing more than a beta male. Sylphie herself is amazed by the foolishness of this move, but she is simply incapable of seeing things as black and white, so she wonders why her master would make such a stupid move. Alan makes the same silly move twice in a row, which makes Sylphie even more suspicious that a human being cannot be this stupid. Since these moves have made Alan's position even harder to come out from, Sylphie decides to defeat him to see what he will do next. To her surprise, but not to the viewers of Comic Guzzlers, Alan starts crying because of his loss. This is so hilarious to watch that even the goddess openly laughs at him for being such a loser. Sylphie is confused at first, but then she comes up with the delusional take that this was a defeat Alan had wanted to incorporate before even beginning the match. She believes that our hero had never intended to win his matches, as we see him getting checked by Noelle. Basically, Sylphie comes to the conclusion that these matches are just some kind of pretext for her master to see how his slave girls would give orders. She believes that these recreational items are a gold mine for the future, and the current financial situation isn't ideal to just be playing games and not do anything else. Ultimately, this is an assignment for the slave girls to procure funds for their master, so now Sylphie knows what kind of answer she needs to give. The slave girls say that it has been their total win, so they will now give an order to their master. Luckily for him, Sylphie would like to be registered at the Merchant Guild so that she can get ownership rights for the games Alan has made. Our hero just sits there and strikes a pose as if he was planning for this all along. The slave girls ask him if this was the answer he wanted from them, but in reality, he is just happy that Sylphie and Noelle did not ask to be freed from their slave contracts to him. He also wonders how absolute novices like his slave girls were able to defeat him despite not having even a fraction of his experience. He had initially thought that this was a brilliant way for him to get into shady action, but his plan has backfired rather horribly on him. When he looks at the board, he realizes that it is completely white, which he had personally thought would not be possible. Anyway, there is a silver lining to all of this, which is that both Sylphie and Noelle actually want to continue being his slave girls. We see Sylphie and Noelle both getting themselves registered at the Merchants Guild, and Alan is proud of their loyalty towards him. At the end of the day, it's highly likely that the girls don't hate our hero, which is good news for him. Little does he know that they actually have an extremely high opinion of him, which may eventually come back to bite him in an unpleasant spot. Due to this joy, he decides to go buy some stuff now that he is at the imperial capital. Sylphie smiles upon seeing her master with so much energy, and she wonders that it's because she and Noelle have passed their tests with flying colors. Of course, this is not the end of it, as Sylphie will now need to make use of her opportunity. She would also like to believe that she has gotten closer to our hero via this exercise. Sylphie blushes and gives us a cute face because she is happy to have done well so far. 2 weeks go by after Noelle and Sylphie get themselves registered at their respective guilds, and the only progress Alan has made so far is that he now has an obsession with shogi. He is having Sylphie play it with him, but she does not get to use rock, bishop, silver generals, knights, and lances. In addition to this, they have agreed on an easy playtime without any constraint for a move wherein Alan can return a piece after he moves it. The slave girl simply says that it will be a great exercise for her mind, which is a bit belittling to our hero, if we can even call him that anymore. Sylphie says it straight to Alan when she calls him weak, and he admits that he does not need to be a genius to understand the tone in which she is saying these things. After a not-so-intense round, we see that even with all her restrictions, Sylphie wins against Alan and thanks him for allowing her some time to get rid of the extra stress. Alan is crying, but he tells her that he will let her know when he decides to get serious himself. Noelle shows up and tells Sylphie that they need to go out soon, and they both notify their master that they will be going to the capital today. They promise to be back by dinner time and leave with haste. Our hero can only sit there and wave goodbye as he has realized he is no match for such overpowered fairy girls. Even so, as he lays in bed, Alan says that he will not admit complete defeat just yet. He still has a plan with his modern knowledge which should give him the easy ticket to shady activities. This is none other than alcohol, which is a tried and tested method of lowering inhibitions, but to use it as a cheat code is to lurk dangerously close to Diddy behavior. Alan goes crazy with his intrusive thoughts and comments on how with a warm body comes loose intentions. If he can just go with the flow after that, then he will easily ascend the stairs of adulthood. At this very moment, the shady goddess shows up again to taunt our hero for being alone yet another evening. He simply tells her not to interfere with his fantasies, but also confesses that both his slave girls have gone to the capital. The goddess comments that such an occurrence has been happening quite often lately, and this puts all kinds of doubts into Alan's head. He gets uneasy because he knows that the girls don't go around shopping since they don't have extra cash to splurge. If that is the case, then what is it exactly that these slave girls are doing in the capital? The goddess sees an opportunity to be evil again, so she asks Alan if Sylphie and Noelle have finally lost fondness for their master, which is why they go to work away from home. Alan realizes that thanks to their magic, the girls were able to cut on food costs, but even so, they can't afford to live in absolute luxury. Since Sylphie and Noelle are both adults, it is obvious that they would want tasty food and cute clothes, and more importantly, now that we know they are adults, we can say they are free from Drake's Drizzler tactics. Even so, it is rather shameful of Alan to only want his slaves to play games with him, that too with advantages heavily favoring him. The goddess comments that while Alan may be right here, he is still quite useless. Our hero feels that Noelle and Sylphie are only going to the capital because they are fed up with him getting beaten by them in games again and again. Alan panics and does not know what to do, as all kinds of worrisome thoughts take over his head. He even considers that the girls may start selling their bodies as women of the night, which is the last thing any slave owner would want. There is no way our hero is going to allow such a thing to happen, so he puts on his flash shoes and rushes to the capital by foot. His panicked face makes all the people of the town wonder what's up with him, as he continues to run towards a destination that we ourselves don't know yet. Alan laments that he has not been able to give these girls anything of substance yet, and he realizes that if he is to exploit them, then he should at least provide them with a happy life. What he does not notice, though, is that there are kids who are playing the exact same games he had shown Sylphie and Noelle. He has now reflected on his shortcomings and rushes to the girls, even being able to find them at the right spot. He tells Sylphie and Noelle that they can ask him anything they want, but he would much rather prefer it if they stay with him instead of coming to the capital. This gesture makes Sylphie tear up, which confuses our hero because that was not the reaction he was expecting. He thinks that his slave girls have had such hard lives that they need to hold back tears, which makes him want to cry himself. With the way Sylphie has also been thinking about him, the manga is clearly telling us that communication is the key. Alan then tells the girls that he will take out money from his account so that they can live as they please. However, he feels that there won't be a lot of cash left in his account anyway. Even so, he goes to the cashier girl to see what his bank balance is. She takes a look and shocks us all by revealing Alan has 3 million dole left. If 1 dole is equal to 100 yen, then that means our hero currently has 300 million yen in his bank account. None of this makes any sense to Alan, but then Sylphie explains how she would diligently put the usage fee of his games into his account on a regular basis. That's when Alan looks around to see people playing his games in the guild waiting room. Not just that, they are also playing these games on the streets. Whether it's children, idly chatting elders, merchants, or even adventurers, our hero's games have become a huge hit in the town. Alan watches on as everyone is somehow involved with one game or the other, and he can't even believe his own eyes. Sylphie now states that to get the rights for these items, she had made a Holy Spirit contract with the Merchants Guild. Of course, there will be imitations in the market as well, but despite this, the games were a hit. Now that this has happened, Sylphie got the guild to increase her rank to the highest possible number. Plus, she added the condition that 1% of the game sales would go directly into her master's account. This is a good business strategy, but unfortunately for Alan, it's just going in one ear and going out the other ear. One thing he does not get, though, is why Sylphie has tears in her eyes even while smiling. Regardless, since her tears are not stopping, Alan suggests going to the shops to buy some stuff for her. He is ready to get his slave girls anything they want, which makes the both of them ponder on for a second. They seem to have come to their decision and tell their master that they are both grateful towards him. The girls then take our hero to a ton of slave shops, which does not make any sense to him. After all, why would someone want to buy an endless number of slaves? However, Alan soon realizes what the game plan is over here, and before you can blink, he now has 50 more slave girls at his beck and call. There are some really cute ones too, such as Ellie, Tina, and Ray. The names keep piling on, and then we see a total babe named Aura who is both cute as well as curvy. She refers to Alan as master, so his intrusive thoughts take over once again. All of these new slave girls are beauties, and to have such a harem is every man's dream. Sylphie then tells Alan that he will now be a village chief, so the girls will expect a lot from him. He does not know what the girls are scheming, but one thing is for sure, which is that he now has to provide for 52 slave girls. He has put himself in a very dangerous position now, so he does not know how his new life is going to go moving forward. Later, Alan lies down on his bed and wonders if he has made a mistake purchasing 50 slave girls all within one day. Of course, none of this is his fault because it was Sylphie and Noelle who wanted to make these purchases. We are taken to a flashback from a couple of hours ago at the slave shop where Sylphie is giving orders to buy slave girls as if she is picking up fruits from a vegetable vendor. The slave trader is very happy with the business he is getting, so he gives the price of his goods. But Sylphie is not to be taken for a fool. She points out all the injuries that these girls have on their bodies, so keeping that in mind, the amounts should go down by at least 2 digits. The slave trader panics and says that he needs to make money off his business, but Sylphie turns it around on him and says that this is a lot better than having to spend on the upkeep of unsold stock. It's a great negotiation tool, and it helps Sylphie get the prices she wants. Alan is also surprised that she would stoop so low as to refer to the slave girls as tools and goods, but he knows that this is the only way to be on equal terms with the slave trader. If she had shown some kind of compassion or sympathy towards the injured girls, then the slave trader would have definitely taken advantage of it. It is still a great achievement because Sylphie has bested a veteran merchant with as much effort as it takes to steal candy from a baby. She then tends to the new purchases with grace and kindness, making sure they are all settled with her. It's quite the task, and Alan applauds Sylphie for doing such a great job. He puts on his Chad face as well because this is not something he would have been able to pull off at all. Of course, he would have loved to do it himself because that would make him a great hero. Sylphie is intelligent, smart, beautiful, dresses well, and smells good too. Not only does she have the agriculture harvesting cheat, she is good with merchants too. By praising her so much, Alan wonders if she is the actual protagonist of this show, which would be a rarity on comic guzzlers. However, the joke's on him because he has been able to get her to fall for him without even doing anything. Alan is not aware of this, so he laments the fact that he is not getting any respect despite being the one who was reincarnated into this world. Noelle now tells Sylphie that one of the slave girl skills are going to blossom soon. She then points out to another one, stating that with the right training, she can get a highly precise alchemy skill. We learn that in this world, there are both hereditary and acquired skills, and the latter blossoming in a person will highly depend on their personality and determination. Alan wonders if there is actually a skill which can detect skills about to blossom. It's not written on a slave's appraisal scroll either, so there's no sure way to know. This could mean that Noelle has the analysis cheat, which means Alan's presence here is not at all required. Now, we go back to the present where our hero is complaining about things moving way too fast. Now that he's asked the girls to come to his room, he will need to come up with a strategy for the future. This is a bit too much for Alan, and he does not even have the time to catch his breath. Sylphie and Noelle show up to their master's room, and the fairy girl is sure there can't be any further misunderstandings. Alan did appreciate her efforts, which caused tears to flow from her eyes, but she does not know if her master saw that. She hopes he didn't and then explains to us how she was worried about Alan being disappointed in her. After all, he gave her so much knowledge and so many items that she felt the pressure to at least earn from them. She personally believes that if Alan was to do this all by himself, then he would have been able to make profits with even 2 more digits to the total sum she has made so far. Her master did not interfere with her plans and instead just asked to play games while also letting her win with ease. Of course, this is so ridiculous that it's hilarious, but Sylphie genuinely believes that there is no way for someone to come up to be this useless. It had to be for the purpose of preparing her for the merchants, and if this is really the case, then Alan's real power in this story is luck. Once again, Sylphie states that there is no way for Alan to hide his compassionate heart from her. However, she maintains that she must keep this side of hers a secret from him, as she cannot reveal how much of a simp she is. She knows that slave girls are usually exploited and worked to the bone without any mercy. However, Alan has taken her and Noelle into his warm hands and not his warm scrotum. It is obvious for her to fall for him in such a case, and now she gets back to serious mode. Sylphie pictures herself telling Alan that she and Noelle have bought the necessary personnel in order to fulfill their master's wish of getting rid of world hunger. She is nervous about Alan's judgment of her choices, so she tries to convince herself that she has done a great job. She asks Alan if they can enter, and then our hero tells his slave girls not to be so nervous around him. They are free to sit anywhere they want, even his face, but he does not have the guts to say that out loud. However, the girls say there is no such need, which makes our hero wonder if it's because they don't want to spend any extra time in a boy's room. He also worries that his room might be smelling, but that's a whole other story. He tells the girls if they're tired then they can just rest at ease. First of all, he would like to appreciate what they did with the recreation items. Of course, he knows that they are stealing the credit of his ideas, but he must be a man and give credit where it is due. He tells them that he is very proud of their actions as their master, which should allow him to fix his position of authority. Of course, his insecure mind imagines Sylphie telling him that they have already earned him a lot of money, leading to Noelle stating that they should be free from their slave crests as a result. He has to make the right impression before that can happen, so he has to put his shady plans to get laid to rest for now. Of course, he still has his eye candy and inadvertent touch plans, both of which really lay a lot of doubt on his personality. Suddenly, Sylphie and Noelle both say that they have not done anything to be worthy of praise, which is a bit confusing for Alan. As a matter of fact, he wonders if the girls are being sarcastic with him. After all, they did earn a whopping amount of 3 million dole, which is a lot more than Alan has ever earned at his clinic. Both the slave girls seem to be gazing at their master, and he does not know why they are looking at him this way. He can't stand their gazes, so he figures he might as well proceed to say what he has cooked up in his head. Our hero declares that he needs to tell the slave girls his plans moving forward, so they better listen to him properly. The goddess shows up again to mock him for being nervous, because she knows he's still wondering if his room is smelly. Alan is not in the mood for these mind games, so he asks the goddess to stop messing with him. Now, our hero explains that he is going to take the money he has spent on each of the new slaves and put them as their respective debts. Once the slave girls repay their debts, he will remove their slave crests from their bodies. This is not what Sylphie and Noelle had in mind, but our hero adds that this is why they should put their focus into agriculture and commerce. Everyone will provide them with labor, which can be converted into money and merchandise. Alan plans to also pay the girls their wages with this money, so that they won't have to suffer while having to repay their debts. Our hero plans to call this a slave's debt repayment restructuration, and he wants to know what Sylphie and Noelle think of it. The slaves will get their freedom while also offering money to his main slave girls. Once all of this will be over, Alan will get freed from the burden of having to provide for 50 slave girls. This is the very picture of a smooth settlement, and Alan is quite proud of the random plan he has come up with. At the end of the day, this is all he could think of, due to his past life as a corporate slave. He actually thinks of this just like how a chief executive officer has a duty to pay all his employees their salaries. Just thinking about it makes Alan's head hurt, but he is sure that no one will oppose his plan. However, both Noelle and Sylphie immediately counter him because to let go of such slave girls by simply getting their purchase price back is not a smart move. If these girls blossom up their skills, then their price will go up even further. The value of these girls has not been realized yet, so Sylphie and Noelle ask their master to reconsider. This is not what our hero had in mind, so how is he going to counter these questions? Also, when is he finally going to have the courage to just say he wants to get laid? Like, share, and subscribe if you are able to speak out your intrusive thoughts, unlike Alan. Hit the bell icon to get notified when I upload the next part, of course, if this video does well enough. Okay then, I'll see you in the next one.